We all love attention when people are looking at us, and these 6 running backs need a little bit more of it. The first running back that needs a little bit more attention is going to be Kyren Williams, who right now on Underdog, to me, is extremely undervalued. Currently going off the board as RB8. Now, let me give this for Kyren Williams. Let's put this into perspective. Last year, my man Kyren Williams finished as the RB2 on a fantasy points per game basis. Like, that's huge. Absolutely amazing. He was the waiver wire darling that if you got Kyren Williams, you had a great shot at winning your league because he was literally a 21.2 points per game difference at the running back position. Now, did he only play in 12 games? Yes. Is durability a little bit of an issue? Of course. But if we're talking about a guy like Kyren Williams, we're looking at in the past, we're looking at players that came and emerged like this on the waiver wires or running back. Like the first guy that came to mind was a guy like Arian Foster, who absolutely won fantasy football leagues back in the early 2010. And the thing is with Arian Foster, the next year, you had to draft Arian Foster in the 1st or 2nd round. Now, Kyren Williams is a middle 3rd round pick after putting up RB2 points per game numbers. Listen, are we scared of Blake Corum? Maybe, potentially a little bit, but not enough for me to say, yep, Kyren Williams with his 228 attempts with the RB2 numbers, there's no way. But ladies and gentlemen, there is times and a place to put a running back a little bit lower. And when we're looking at the rankings, of course, we can talk ourselves into all the guys going ahead. Bijan Robinson hasn't done it. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's done it, but not to the level that Kyren Williams just did. Mr. Devon is an absolute game breaker. So is Kyren Williams. So it's hard for me to really say Kyren Williams doesn't deserve more attention because he does. And I think it's time that we continue to boost him up a little bit on the boards because he's right now pretty undervalued. The second running back that I think deserves way more attention in fantasy football is going to be Mr. Rachaad White. And Mr. Rachaad White is getting a lot of hate in the fantasy football community right now because of the fact that last year he had 3.6 yards per carry and the year before that had 3.7. So now he's going into year 3 and a lot of people are saying, hey, listen, they brought in Bucky Irving. If some of that pass catching work, because he had an amazing 64 receptions last year, goes away, all of a sudden he goes from being like RB10 all the way down to like RB17, RB18. And when you're having to draft him right now in Underdog as the overall RB15, you're like, yikes, am I drafting him at a ceiling right now in Underdog? Now, I think the argument to me with Rachaad White is last year he had 9 total touchdowns, 64 receptions, 549 receiving yards, and only 990 rushing yards on 272 attempts. Listen, he got the volume on the attempts, so I am not concerned at all if for some reason he were to maybe give a little bit more of those to Bucky Irving and somehow Rachaad White were to get around 260 rushing attempts. I think the receptions are here to stay because as much as Bucky Irving is the 3rd down pass catching running back, I think Rachaad White is actually better at that. And if we learned anything last year, the biggest thing with the Tampa Buccaneers is they were not able to block. They addressed the offensive line a little bit, but if this offense can be just even a little bit better, I think Rachaad White, who was RB9 on red zone touches last year, there's a chance that it could go up. I mean, RB2 on carries, RB9 in targets. Like, we love to see the volume. And so I know a lot of people are going to argue that, hey, we can't really base it on efficiency. So if the volume is to go down, Caleb, how can he have a better year than he did last year? My big thing is I think the efficiency is going to go up because I think Rachaad White's a super talented running back. And I absolutely love Rachaad White. And I think he needs to be getting more attention in fantasy football because currently right now he's just not getting that type of attention. My third running back that I think deserves more attention is going to be Mr. Jerome Ford. And we're jumping down the board a little bit with Jerome Ford. Going off the board is RB39. What the heck is happening with Nick Chubb? I think that's the first part that I wanted to address with Jerome Ford, because if Nick Chubb is coming and he gets put on the PUP and he's out the first 6 weeks of the season, Jerome Ford is going to be the man to take a ton of the touches. Now, I put out my last video when I talked about Jerome Ford a few weeks ago. Someone in the comments was like, Caleb, why are you not giving enough credit to D'Onta Foreman? And the truth is, I don't think D'Onta Foreman is going to cut into Jerome Ford's workload because Jerome Ford is the most explosive running back at this point in their career. With Jerome Ford last year averaging 4 yards per carry, 12.4 fantasy points per game, was the RB25 on a points per game basis. And I think right now, if you can be getting that on a points per game basis and you are drafting Jerome Ford at RB39, makes me super excited to see what Jerome Ford can do if he were to be getting the full workload. Because if we look at his overall game log, you can see that in week 2, 24 fantasy points, 19 fantasy points, 17 fantasy points, 12. It's like he has high-end upside, and then he's pretty consistent even in the weeks like 12, 11, 11, 11, 14, 13. So even his floor games can be pretty consistent for me with Jerome Ford. I absolutely think Jerome Ford deserves to be getting more attention. I think he will get more attention. I do like Jerome Ford in fantasy football for 2024. My next guy is going to be Raheem Mostert. And as much as we were just talking about Devon, Raheem Mostert, let us not forget, top 5 on a points per game basis last year with RB4, 17.9 fantasy points per game. game. And this offseason, they bring in Jaleel White. There's a lot to be excited about with this Miami Dolphins offense. The biggest concern for me with Raheem Mostert and this offense is what is that snap share going to look like? We know Raheem Mostert can never seem to stay healthy, even though the last 2 years he's played 16 and 15 games. He's been nicked up a little bit, so that's always kind of been a concern of his overall durability. He is also getting up there in age. He's 32 years old. Now, he doesn't have the same type of mileage because of the way that he came into the NFL and really broke out in 2019 as a 28-year-old, and he really didn't have a ton of miles on his body before that. But that is something to be concerned of, as well as the fact that they drafted Jaleel White. So Raheem Mostert, I think all in all, based on him being ranked in underdog leagues right now as RB28, and you know that ultimate ceiling that he does have in a Mike McDaniel's offense, makes me excited. I think he's a little bit undervalued right now, and I think there's a reason that we need, and he deserves a little bit more attention heading into 2024. My fifth running back that I think deserves a little bit more attention heading into 2024 is going to be Brian Robinson for the Washington Commanders. Number one, a lot of people are worried for Brian Robinson because of the fact that we get Jaden Daniels in, and last year, Brian Robinson, as much as he was an RB22 on a points per game basis with 13.2, 4.1 yards per carry, we like that. We love the story of him absolutely overcoming the adversity that he overcame last offseason. Jaden Daniels doesn't like to check down the ball. So the fact that Brian Robinson had 36 receptions last year, a lot of people are projecting him to have a little bit less than that, especially with the fact that they brought in Austin Eckler and you still have Chris Rodriguez. But no need to rain on Mr. Brian Robinson's parade. I think the big thing that we need to understand with Brian Robinson is the 9 total touchdowns that he had last year. And I am one to believe that the Washington Commanders are going to be a more improved offense with a Jaden Daniels over a guy like Sam Howell last offseason. You still got Scary Terry, Jahan Dotson, you bring in Zach Ertz, you draft Benson. You also have all the running backs in the backfield. I think this offense is going to be good enough to support 2 running backs. Like, I do think Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler will both have some sort of fantasy football value. I know there's the worry that the overall upside of Brian Robinson is going to be capped, but I do think Brian Robinson is going to be getting the early down work. The contract that Austin Eckler got really signifies he's going to be the third down pass catching running back, which maybe makes you a little bit of concern for Brian Robinson. But I think Brian Robinson, after what he did last year as RB22, deserves to be getting more attention because he's going off the board as RB30. And the fact that you're really debating Brian Robinson, like, I hear you, but I would love to know what you think of Brian Robinson. Do you think Brian Robinson deserves more attention? Let me know down below. And my final running back that I think deserves more attention in fantasy football is going to be Mr. Jaleel McLaughlin for the Denver Broncos. Number one, Sean Payton came out this week and said that he thinks Audric Estime looks like the perfect early down running back. Does that make us a little bit concerned for Javonte Williams? Sure. Best news about this 3-headed workhorse, this 3-headed backfield, is the fact that we've seen this pony show before. We've seen the Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram splits. Sean Payton likes to run a running back by committee, and Jaleel McLaughlin is the most exciting running back in this backfield. Last year, 5.4 yards per carry, played in 17 games, 76 rushing attempts, only 6.2 fantasy points per game, was the RB49. Now, let us dive into the metrics a little bit, and let us understand where I am super excited for Jaleel McLaughlin. If we actually look at productivity last year, he was RB29 receptions with 31, but he was RB9 on a fantasy points per opportunity. That meant that this man was absolutely electric when he got the ball in his hands. RB13 on a breakaway run rate, RB6 on a juke rate, RB10 on yards per touch, RB4 on true yards per carry. Like, these metrics scream that Jaleel McLaughlin, if he's given more of an opportunity, my dude can absolutely ball. Now, Jaleel McLaughlin doesn't necessarily have the frame, be an absolute bell cow, but he was a great waiver wire pickup for a few weeks last year. And the fact that you're able to get him right now at RB48 around guys like a Jaleel White, around guys like a Tyler Algier, a Kamini Vidal, like Ray Davis, like Jaleel McLaughlin's proven that he can do it, and he has ultimate level upside. Now, it hasn't been great. It's been in very short spurts, but I do think Jaleel McLaughlin deserves to rise up the rankings just a little bit. I do think he deserves more attention heading into 2024 fantasy football. So let me know what you think of these running backs down below. Do they deserve more attention in fantasy football? Do they not deserve more attention in fantasy football? Like I said, running backs this year, it's an interesting position because it does get thin pretty quick. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Check out these 2 videos if you want to watch a little bit more, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.